American stress index has gone up. Big shock there. It's nothing really worth reading about. Somebody has been funded to measure the amount of stress that everyone's feeling. It's the usual thing. It's the economy. It's college debt. Basically, it's the usual: money, work, and the economy. So there's a huge article about it, and I read through it earlier, and I thought, I'm not going to subject them to all of this. This is ridiculous. So, yes, we're all a little bit stressed out. A simple drive down Interstate 75 through the middle of Dallas will give you an indication of just how much stress there is, at least in this town. But then again, I find traffic conditions are always ugly in liberal towns. Now, this is a little bit disturbing. You know, we like Michael Snyder. His website is End of the American Dream. He's a sharp guy, he really is. And he writes, sabotage. Obama is commanding an army of 30,000 anti-Trump activists from his home 2 miles from the White House. Throughout American history, he writes, most ex-presidents have chosen to move away from Washington, D.C. once their terms have ended, and the vast majority of them have tried very hard not to interfere with their successors. Unfortunately, Barack Obama has opted for the exact opposite approach. His new home is less than 2 miles from the White House, and from this command center, he'll be directing the activities of an army of more than 30,000 anti-Trump activists. In fact, as you will see below, he writes, this army has already been heavily involved in many of the protests and riots that have been popping up around the nation in recent days. Sabotage is a very strong word, but it's becoming apparent that Obama intends to do all he can to sabotage the Trump administration. That's very bad news for the American people. On Saturday, the New York Post ran an excellent article by author Paul Sperry that was entitled, How Obama is Scheming to Sabotage Trump's Presidency. In that piece, Sperry actually accuses Obama of setting up a shadow government to oppose Trump. And here's a little bit from the article that Sperry wrote. When former President Barack Obama said he was heartened by anti-Trump protests, he was sending a message of approval to his troops. Troops? Yes. Obama has an army of agitators numbering more than 30,000 who will fight his Republican successor at every turn of his historic presidency, and Obama will command them from a bunker less than 2 miles from the White House. That is a little bit strange, isn't it? But not totally unexpected. The little upturned chin, he would just be perfect on any communist poster. In what's shaping up to be a highly unusual post-presidency, Obama isn't just staying behind in Washington, he's working behind the scenes to set up what will effectively be a shadow government to not only protect his threatened legacy, Wells adds, of failure and duplicity, but to sabotage the incoming administration and its popular America First agenda. The army of agitators that Sperry's talking about is actually a nationwide network of community organizers known as Organizing for Action. So remember that name, Organizing for Action. If you go to the official website of Organizing for Action, you will see that there's a big picture of Obama right in the background of the home page. Organizing for Action grew out of Barack Obama's first presidential campaign and claims to have 250 local chapters around the nation. If Hillary Clinton had won the election, Organizing for Action would most certainly have faded from the spotlight, but now that Trump is in the White House, they are rapidly raising money and gearing up for war. And one of the first things the organization is trying to do is save Obamacare. The following comes from NBC News. Quote, to defend Obamacare, the group says it has planned 400 healthcare-focused events in 42 states this year with partners that include mainline liberal groups like the Center for American Progress and Planned Parenthood, as well as those from the progressive wing like MoveOn.org. OFA says 20,000 people have used their tool to call senators' offices to urge them not to repeal Obamacare, and says 1 million supporters have already taken action with OFA. The goal is to further hinder the already stalling momentum around the repeal of the Affordable Care Act. Well, you could always just not, don't go for it. But this doesn't Aetna Insurance, the CEO says they're in a death spiral. We had a communist for a president, and don't make any mistake about that. He's heartened by the protests around the country. Gee, what if that had been your car out there being smashed up? Maybe your daughter maced in the face by some liberal moron. How warm and fuzzy would you be feeling toward this so-called former president? What a disgusting excuse for a human being, let alone a president. Organizing for action is not just about peaceful political action. In fact, according to Sperry, some of the anti-Trump marches that Organizing for Action have put together actually, quote, turned into riots. Here's a quote from Sperry. Far from sulking, OFA activists help organize anti-Trump marches across U.S. cities, some of which turned into riots. After Trump issued a temporary ban on immigration from 7 terror-prone Muslim nations, the demonstrators jammed airports chanting, "No ban, no wall, sanctuary for all." Run by old Obama aides and campaign workers, federal tax records show nonpartisan OFA marshals 32,525 volunteers nationwide. It's registered as a 501c4. It doesn't have to disclose its donors, but they've been generous. OFA has raised more than $40 million in contributions and grants since evolving from Obama's campaign organization, Obama for America, in 2013. So many people have been pointing the finger at George Soros for funding and organizing anti-Trump events, but the truth is that Organizing for Action is perhaps even more involved than Soros is. And Barack Obama is guiding and directing Organizing for Action from his brand new compound less than 2 miles from the White House. The ironic thing about all this is that Obama is currently building a very tall brick wall around his compound, while at the same time his army of activists is highly criticizing Trump for wanting to build a border wall to protect the United States from unwanted intruders. If Obama doesn't like walls, he should tear his own wall down first. Another form of sabotage against the Trump administration is coming from Obama loyalists that are still embedded within various government agencies. According to Mr. Trump, those loyalists are responsible for the very disturbing leaks that have been happening. Quote, President Donald Trump pointed the finger at Obama administration holdovers at the White House and National Security Council for leaking information about private phone conversations he had with leaders of Australia and Mexico. Trump told Fox News it's a disgrace that they leaked because it's very much against our country, accusing Obama people in civil service positions for the leaks. It's a very dangerous thing for this country, he added, noting that these individuals are still being sought out and replaced. Needless to say, after 8 years under Obama, many government agencies are absolutely crawling with people that are still very loyal to him. Trump needs to do a major house cleaning, and that's going to take some time. What's going on between Obama and Trump is a microcosm of what's happening to society as a whole. Obama and his loyalists have totally bought into the radical progressive agenda of the global elite, and Donald Trump and his followers are very much against it. I don't know that it's possible for there to be much compromise between the two sides, and so that means more conflict is ahead. The election of Donald Trump has fired up the radical left like never before, and I believe the protests and riots we've seen so far are just the beginning. If things really go bad under Trump, it's very easy to imagine widespread civil unrest erupting all over the nation. Unfortunately, throughout all of this, we're going to be having an ex-president sitting less than 2 miles from the White House guiding and directing the anti-Trump forces every step of the way. There's a move right now to charge Barack Obama with treason. Treason is a pretty tough charge to prove. But he is, in my opinion, and in the opinion of many people, a complete traitor to this country. And the things that he did are so much, it's so strange. It's just like, an old Chicago expat, he's dead now, named John Allen Curtis. He was quite a character. John Allen Curtis used to say things like, the only emotion that you're ever going to see from people you've been generous to is anger when you quit doing it. And he also said, you ever notice how judges seem to be so lenient toward the criminals? He said, you know why that is? I said, no, John, why is that? He said, because they're criminals themselves. It's like this Robard deciding that. I mean, there's the language that says the president can ban, bar, or otherwise repulse any aliens or any group of aliens that he wants, particularly if it's in the interest of national security. But now you get these vicious little liberals that come on these various news channels. It's a Muslim ban. Well, you know, what if it was a Muslim ban? Islam doesn't seem to be working out very well in the countries where it's the strongest. Why would we want it here? Well, I would think that a rational person would come to the conclusion that we don't need it here. If some Muslims want to be here and have their little mosques and so forth, that's fine. The problem is going to be when you have so many of them here that they then become the majority. And just like that little bit in a Three Stooges episode, this guy's complaining while the Three Stooges are dressed up like Mose Hitler and Curly's playing Goering, and I don't know what Larry's doing. He's got some sash across. I don't even know who he was supposed to be. But this guy says, I object. Your minorities are invading our majorities until you're making our majorities minorities. Object. They objected to that, right? But it's true. It's no wonder our parents didn't want us watching the Three Stooges, because there's a lot of adult content in there, and I don't mean sexual content either. So, there you go. Little Barack Obama still wants to be king. Little upturned chin. Now, get this. Michael Moore, the giant bloated pig boy and crap filmmaker, liberal progressive fool, just melts down, tells Trump to resign by morning or face impeachment, you Russian traitor. The people who put forth these ridiculous ideas, whether it's the shape of the planet or whether it's this kind of thing that Michael Moore has put out, they have one thing in common. They are progressive leftists to a person. And they are, in my opinion, mentally ill. Here's an example. California governor spends $25 billion per year on illegals, but officials warned that dam was failing 12 years ago. According to a report from the Washington Times, and this comes to us via the Gateway Pundit, California Governor Jerry Brown's been spending $25 billion a year supporting illegal immigrants while neglecting the failing Oroville Dam. The flood danger from the Oroville Dam receded Monday, but California was hit by a wave of criticism for failing to heed the warnings about risks to the spillway at a time when the state spent generously on illegal immigrants and high-speed rail. California Governor Jerry Brown, a Democrat, came under fire amid reports that federal and state officials for years rebuffed or ignored calls to fortify the massive 50-year-old dam, which provides water to more than 20 million farmers and residential customers. Assemblyman Tim Donnelly, a Republican, asked in a post on Facebook Monday, what's Governor Brown doing? The same thing he's been doing for decades, obstructing progress. See, that's the thing. They call themselves progressives, but they're about anything but progress. They're about retardation. A radio talk show host, Mr. Donnelly, said California has been so busy defying President Donald Trump in order to protect illegal aliens from deportation that it forgot to do the things the government's supposed to do, like maintain infrastructure. Governor Brown's now going hat in hand to beg the Trump administration for emergency funds, and I think he should be turned down. And said, you know what, Brown, you're such a bleeping genius. You go solve the problem. You're spending $25 billion a year of taxpayer money and federal money on illegal aliens, and you're not taking care of a dam you've been warned about for over a decade. Why don't you go take a run and jump in the lake that probably been formed in several areas around the collapsing dam, and just you come up with the money. I hope Donald Trump tells Jerry Brown to go to hell. I really do. I wonder if he will. Well, I think Jerry Brown's already in hell, so maybe something else. I've got one in mind, but I can't say it now. Despite California's utter hatred for President Trump, they sure do expect a lot from him. When President Trump said $1 trillion needed to be spent on the nation's infrastructure, Governor Brown responded by submitting a $100 billion wish list for projects in California. In the $100 billion request submitted by Governor Brown, there was not a single mention of the Oroville Dam. Governor Brown had absolutely no plans to fix it, despite warnings that the dam was in serious need of repair for nearly 12 years, according to Mercury News. So that's enough of that. It's just ridiculous. Now, the Trump administration is considering designating the Muslim Brotherhood a foreign terrorist organization, and Human Rights Watch is outraged. Human Rights Watch. Folks, listen. I can read this stuff until Hades freezes over. You know what's going on here, and there is going to be trouble in the country. I've been very reluctant to start singing out about stuff hitting the fan, but it's going to hit the fan. There are, in the words of George Carlin, the late George Carlin, we have a serious dope problem in the country. There are way too many dopes. And when you look at the stuff that happened at Berkeley, and on the program here, we've discussed how Berkeley has been very closely associated with the military-industrial complex for a long time. And you see these people dressed up in their black hoodies with their black pants. They've all got the same sticks for smashing windows with, and you see this little. I could only use this word is not appropriate outside of a kennel, but that would be that little scumbag Yvette Falarca. Just pulling on this guy and pushing him and all that until finally she gets some supporters around. They start pushing him, they knock him down, and then the cops come over. Don't look to the police to protect you. They won't. It comes down to it. Because someone will tell them to stand down. Now, should you have some protective equipment? Yes. Should you have an escape plan? Yes. Should you make sure your homeowner's insurance or your renter's insurance, or wherever you live, is paid up? Mm-hmm. If there's a riot clause in there, make sure that it's there. And if there isn't one there, then you might want to write something supplemental. All we need for a perfect storm is a little problem with the economy, a little terrorist attack. See, what'll happen if somebody sets off, I don't know, some sort of a terrorist device, let's put it that way, whatever it is. You know who they're going to blame for this. Well, they're going to blame President Trump for it. Now look, given a choice between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, to me the choice is obvious. It's Donald Trump. Do I think he's the Messiah? No, that's Jesus. There's only one Messiah, and that's Jesus. Donald Trump is not the Messiah. But he is who we have now. Were we happy under Barack Obama? No. Do we think that we would be happy under Hillary Clinton? No. And look at the idiots, the way they support her. We're going to raise your taxes. Yay! We're going to open the border and let in more illegal immigrants. Yay! Your taxpayer money, which you're going to pay more of, is going to pay for the illegal immigrants. Yay! We're going to make everybody turn gay once a year. Yay! You know, that I'm kidding. But anything that flies in the face of anything traditional or normal, that's what the Democrats, the progressive left, that's what they champion. So as we reject their so-called doctrine, we'll be met with threats and, in some cases, violence. A person has a right to protect their property and their lives. And I, for one, am not going to let some misguided, delusional, progressive, leftist, communist puke take either. You need to be prepared to fight. We're not going to get out of this. I know most people don't want trouble. Well, I've got some bad news for you. You've got trouble. And it's coming down the road. You have a little Muslim probably homosexual, communist-leaning Chicago weirdo of questionable origin 2 miles away from the White House. He looks like exactly what he represents. He looks like that thing in Alien, only without the big hood and the thing that comes out of his mouth that smashes into people's foreheads. You remember that? He looks a little bit like that. Those teeth, that grinning demonic face and all of that. I mean, sorry, but when you look at somebody, line up several people and go, which one of these is the serial killer? That guy. Correct. Which one is the psychotic? That one. Which is the normal one? I think number 3 looks pretty normal. You know, people say, well, you shouldn't judge people. Well, let us understand that, biblically speaking, judgment belongs to God, our Creator. But if you don't make judgments of the other kind, how can you make any decisions as to who you want to associate with or what actions you will or will not be part of? So call it discernment. Well, that's a judgment, isn't it? I mean, just asking. So here's the thing. You need to have a backup plan. This is not going to go away. We're, what 3 weeks into Donald Trump's presidency? And it's insane. And those are very good questions. Who is it inside? Look, a long time ago, former CIA officer told me, all the security services have been infiltrated by Islamists. All of them. They have encrypted email. They communicate with each other. It's on the way down low. I've been hollering from the tallest rooftop I could, and that would be Coast to Coast AM, about the rise of global communism. Boy, they didn't want to hear that at all, because the liberals would get upset, and they would call the sales department. And this John Wells guy, we just don't like what he's saying. And, of course, the sales department, they're not concerned about anything except how much money they're going to get at the end of the month based on the advertising revenue that they've collected for that month. They don't care about philosophy. They don't care about the condition of the country. The only thing they care about is their little paycheck. Well, there may come a time when the paycheck is the least of our worries. These people want to bring this country down. I wish I could, if we didn't have this kind of stuff to talk about, what would we talk about? Well, we could talk about science and technology. We could talk about advances in medicine. That a heart has been effectively grown in a laboratory that beats, which is pretty strange. But artificial skin can feel temperature changes and restore temperature sensing to amputees and so forth. I mean, that's wonderful. New world technology, science plan to alter minds and delete history, distort morals, plant memories, control behavior, stuff like that. That's the flip side of the science that's supposed to benefit humanity. But there are a number of forces out there that do not want to do anything but enslave and destroy humanity. Just like people who kidnap former members of intelligence services and other key people to subject them to rendition, torture them, to extract information for a primary client, and then either kill the person or pass them off to somebody else who also wants to extract information from them. And they just torture these people until they're eventually, they go past the line where it's like, do me a favor and kill me off. It's very strange what happens to people under torture. The same sort of thing is going on in the scientific community. What makes us think that what happened down in Berkeley, as was suggested by Dr. Hamamoto, what makes us think that that wasn't, as long as we have this perfect opportunity, why don't we see if broadcasting some of these different electromagnetic frequencies can actually alter the behavior of the mob? I wasn't there inside those buildings, so I don't know if that was done or not. but I would guess that somebody thought about it. Let's take this article. Now, I implore you not to let the title of the website be prejudicial, because it can be. It's from ChristianTruther.com. New World Technology. Scientists plan to alter our minds, delete history, distort morals, implant memories, and control behavior. By Nate Brown. Mankind is on the cusp of a transition that we cannot come back from. For many years, scientists have sought technology that can actively alter memories and identity. New World Technology has the ability to change our perception by altering our memory. Some of the technologies can even make us forget history, and by doing so, can distort morals. But there's a far greater evil. Scientists can even plant memories. Several methods are mentioned in this video by S. Matthew Liao, L-I-A-O, Liao, who is the current holder of the Arthur Zittrain Chair of Bioethics and is the director of the Center for Bioethics and affiliated professor in the Department of Philosophy at New York University. Now get this. Those methods are as follows. Functional magnetic resonance imaging is a functional neuroimaging procedure using MRI technology that measures brain activity by detecting changes associated with blood flow. This technique relies on the fact that cerebral blood flow and neuronal activation are coupled. When an area of the brain is in use, blood flow to that region also increases. Then we have deep brain stimulation, a neurosurgical procedure introduced in 1987 involving the implantation of a medical device called a neurostimulator, sometimes referred to as a brain pacemaker, which sends electrical impulses through implanted electrodes to specific targets in the brain for the treatment of movement and neuropsychiatric disorders. Then, psychopharmaceuticals and psychopharmacology, the scientific study of the effects drugs have on mood, sensation, thinking, and behavior. It is distinguished from neuropsychopharmacology, which emphasizes the correlation between drug-induced changes in the functioning of cells in the nervous system and changes in consciousness and behavior. The speaker, S. Matthew Liao, mentioned several incidences where altering memories are applicable, and in each case, the bioethicist attempted to prove that altering what we remember was somehow acceptable, all while mentioning that DARPA, using deep brain stimulation, is seeking to create super soldiers. This is where we are now. And we can't come back from this. There's no going back. We are compelled to go forward. It's impossible to go back. Oh, I'd like to. But even if you could, what time period would you roll the clock back to? There isn't a period that you can think of, I'll bet you, that you're saying, oh, it was much better then than it is now. It's been trouble decade after decade after decade. I think we got a little bit of relief in the 80s. The 70s, kind of dicey, you know. We had the whole Vietnam thing going, didn't get out of there until 75, and then you know, the hostage situation and all of that, and then at the end in 79, the Russians roll into Afghanistan, wind up staying there for, 9 years, something. So, if you want to stay away from judgment, fine. But I would say concentrate on discernment. Because what is afoot here is not friendly to your humanness. It is not good for you in any way, shape, or form. These are merely tools of enslavement and nothing more, because that's what the people who hold the purse strings to the world, that's what they want. They want control. The ones who want to nationalize the health care system. They want control over your health. They want control over your food. They want control over your car. They want control over how much you can drive your car. If you drive it too much, before long, they've already done it in some places. Toll roads are popping up all over the place. That's just the beginning. In certain places, and in England, for example, you're taxed by the mile that you drive. Control, 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 control. And the more people we have, the more control they're going to want. Because if they don't have more control, then the increased number of people, well, threatens their ability to govern. It just goes hand in hand. So, prepare to defend yourself and your family and your neighbors. You know, we've kicked around this idea of 1,000 little Vietnams all over the country. That could very well happen. We have to get on and stay on the same page. And when we hear these people, these news outlets, that continue to say, the Russians, the Russians, the Russians, about 100,000 of us need to call those people and tell them, you know what? We're contacting your sponsors. They're not going to change their minds, and they're not going to change what they're doing. The only way to make them stop is to put them out of business. Make all of these big networks that distort the truth of things, turn them all into little MSNBCs, failures with virtually no viewership whatsoever, except the really hardcore. And let the really hardcore have that stuff. Because no matter what happens, people are going to find a cause to get behind. And the easiest cause to get behind always is the wrong cause for anybody to get behind. All right, it's Wednesday night, and so we're going to speak with our friend Jack Sen. He's a contributing correspondent from the UK. His website is resistanceradio.tv. Jack, how you doing?
Pretty good. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. You know, just I feel like Don Quixote, you know, wailing away at those windmills of technical issues and other stuff. I mean, yeah. It's very strange. I wonder if Mercury's in retrograde again. I hate it when that happens. Anyway, what's going on overseas, man? I'm wanting the Brexit right away. I want the UK to leave. I want France to leave. I want Italy to leave, and then I want Germany to leave. And I want Angela Merkel to be smitten on her backside with somebody's jackboot as she goes down the road, hopefully never to be seen again. But that aside, what's going on over there?
Well, that would be good. We'll see what happens and what comes of it. But that would be certainly a positive development if we actually do get the Brexit. Not much. I mean, the invasion continues. The migration into Europe from people from the Middle East and Africa and Asia is at a fever pace at this point, unfortunately. And we discussed earlier how George Soros is seemingly funding the migration of people into Europe from every point on the planet, and it's not letting up. It's increasing, and it's pretty bad. Unfortunately, it's a very dangerous situation.
You know, just to wring our hands a little bit over this, I don't live in Europe. Clearly, I'm in Texas, and Dallas, Texas, has decided they're going to dodge the sanctuary cities label by calling itself a welcoming city. Of course, as I said on the radio program on Saturday night, it's like, you know, if you didn't have so many immigrants in here, illegal aliens tying up the city services and so forth, you might be able to pay your police officers a decent wage, because a little suburb to the west known as Hurst, Texas, pays way more money than you do. You've got cops leaving at record numbers. And, there's also a problem with the pensions for the policemen and the firefighters. In fact, some of them may have to give some of it back. So I'm just wondering, what do these people think that they're doing by bringing in all these refugees from the Middle East? I take it they're not vetting them any more carefully than our people have been vetting the ones coming in here.
Well, it's quite remarkable. I mean, there's something called the Cadogan Plan, which was this idea that they would displace the indigenous people of Europe with people from third world countries, and the idea that it would just change the entire dynamic of Europe. So some people had ideological reasons for it. Other people wanted to just destroy the indigenous European culture.
Yeah.
But someone like George Soros, I mean, what he stands to gain from it, I mean, really, he just wants to destabilize Europe. I look at this. We have Resistance Radio, I co-founded it with a good friend of mine, Nick Griffin, who's a former member of European Parliament. And he traveled this last month to Belgrade in Serbia with his Alliance for Peace and Freedom, which is a EU-funded organization, because he was an MEP. And he rang me from there, and we did a little recording, and he said there were lines for services for the immigrants, for the migrants, for the invaders, call them what you wish. And they were waiting for free services, and these services and goods were being handed out by Western, white, predominantly females, well-dressed, obviously very upper-middle class. He went and questioned a few of them and asked them why they were there, and they all came back with the same responses, that they were on their gap year from school. They were taking time off to help people. Their parents were funding this project of theirs, or they had funded it with their part-time jobs back home. And obviously that's not the case. Each person had the exact same response. And what they're doing is they're receiving money from George Soros organizations like Human Rights Watch and different migration groups. And they will travel to these places and encourage these people to move from Serbia into Western Europe, ultimately to arrive in France, and then bang on the Britain's door to come to Great Britain, because the vast majority of the students were British, in fact. So these students were handing out also these migrant handbooks, which were funded by George Soros, we believe. In there it tells you who to ring, where to go, what to say, how to get through borders, and what to demand when you enter countries in West Europe. And these were handbooks written in several different languages that were actually handed out to the migrants. So it was quite remarkable. And on top of that, there's a gentleman named Carlos Slim, who you probably know from the United States. He is one of the richest men in the world. He's, I believe, a Middle Eastern descent, but he's a Mexican. And he funds mobile phones for the migrants when they arrive on European soil. He gives them. And remarkably, the money's coming from the United States. Well, the Obama phone, which I'm sure you know of, were phones that were handed out to poor people in the United States. It was actually a project started by Ronald Reagan, but it has been exploited unbelievably by Obama and the Carlos Slim's company, as well as AT&T and Sprint, to the tune of $10, $15 per month is what they receive for these phones, for each one they hand out to people who make less, I think, $25,000, which is probably not that low of a wage. But so these people get free phones in the United States, and this man is using this money to then buy phones from migrants arriving in Europe illegally to travel to Great Britain. And with these phones, who knows what they're doing? Are they plotting attacks? Are they just ringing immigration lawyers that Soros funds? Are they ringing their families back home? Are they playing video games? Who knows what they're doing with these phones? But at the end of the day, it's free phones for people who shouldn't even be in Europe. You couldn't make this stuff up. You couldn't make it up.
You know, this is probably ridiculous to even speculate on something like this, but maybe not. It appears that, I mean, look, you've got the people, and then you have the. It's amazing how no matter who I talk to, at some point, if I talk with them long enough, I mean, people in the security services, people who are just, geostrategists. They will eventually mention that what is written in the Bible is very clearly to be seen today, that we are not fighting against flesh and blood, but these principalities of the air, basically off-world influences. And I'm thinking to myself, yes, okay, point number one, if it's not the story of the battle between good and evil, then absolutely none of this makes any sense. And number two, how can you possibly explain the way the machinery of global society is working now? It is so. I was talking with Andy Hoffman earlier. He's with Miles Franklin, and he's a financial guy. And I'm asking him, don't we have the best and brightest working in the financial sector? I mean, these are supposed to be people who we look up to because they're smart and stuff like this. He said, Keystone, he said two words, Keystone Cops. It's like, okay. And you look at the workings of government, and it's Keystone Cops. I mean, this whole thing with General Flynn over here. Do I think that Do we think that Donald Trump colluded with the Russians to change the election? Well, I didn't talk to any Russians before I voted for Trump. I can tell you that. I didn't speak to a single Russian. Not one.
Well, we do know that the Chinese and the Saudis pumped hundreds of millions of dollars into Hillary Clinton's foundation and her campaign. So they had a much larger influence on the election than the Russians had.
Kind of what I'm thinking too.
Even if the Russians had some influence, which I don't believe they had, I mean, it paled in comparison to the influence the Saudis and the Chinese had on the American election.
Yeah, but you know, Jack, what I was getting at with that principalities of the air and so forth, you know, or whatever. The biblical aspect of things is that it looks to me like evil forces want to cause widespread bloodshed. They don't care. And civil war is the easiest way to depopulate the planet. Just let them go at each other. We don't have to get our official armies and march against each other. We don't have to nuke each other and destroy everything that we'd really like to seize and claim as assets. No, what we'll do is we'll just... What possible rationale can there be for infusing Western Europe with all of these Muslim, primarily, refugees? What?
Well, I mean, I think it depends on the person who's encouraging them to come in. I mean, I think each of these evil people or each of these entities, evil entities, have different motivations behind it. Some people want to destroy the indigenous European population. That's quite obvious. Other people, I think, really truly believe that people should have the right to live where they want to live, as crazy as it sounds. They also believe, some people really think that it's easier to control the population when you drive to IQs and import non-indigenous people into a population. And also other people just want to see the whole place go up in smoke. I mean, it really depends on the person. I mean, the large corporations, I think, obviously it's a lot easier to have poorer third world people working for you. They'll demand a lower wage. I mean, the wages have just been driven through the floor. The landowners obviously like that they can increase the prices of rents, and property owners obviously get a lot more money for their properties now that we have a tidal wave of people coming to the country. So, I mean, where I used to live on Merseyside in Southport, which is right near Liverpool, about 10 years ago, my rent was about half what it is about 2 months ago, what it was about 2 months ago. So in 10 years, it more than doubled. And before that, I was told that they went up maybe 1 or 2% a year. They're going up 200, 250% every 10 years now. And the wages are not increasing.
Oh, boy. Well.
So you can't afford to live. I mean, it's not like Texas where you can buy a nice house for a good, a decent price. In Great Britain, we have a shortage of properties. We have obviously a surplus of people, and the houses, the price of housing is just, it's astronomical. You have no idea how expensive it is. It's extremely expensive.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, in the United States, somebody came on the program the other day and said, look, we don't need to build another house. And in fact, in this part of the world, in this part of the country, the housing prices are ridiculously high. I mean, people routinely pay above the asking price just to get that house. So, I mean, you talk about a seller's market, that's what this is. And yet, we see construction all over the place. Primarily, it's high-rises and mid-rises in the downtown area. They're just jamming so many people into what they call the uptown area, north of downtown by just, I don't know, maybe a mile. And it's absolutely absurd. So, yeah, everybody's got to have a home, that's for sure. But, I mean, did they not factor this in when they thought about bringing in all these refugees? Did they not think, well, what are we going to do, put them in camps, or are they going to live in apartments and houses like normal people do? They didn't think about that before they started bringing them all in, right?
No, I don't think so. And I don't think a lot of people realize just how many people Barack Obama has brought into the country, he's opened the door to about 150,000 refugees per year. And if you look at that 150,000 people, if each of them have 2 or 3 children, and each of them bring in family members from overseas, you're looking at, in a 10-year period, of quite remarkably about 5 to 10 million people from that class of refugees in that year. It's an incredible amount of people. I mean, because some people are bringing in 10, 15 people with them into the country, and then they procreate where they come in the country at high rates. So, I mean, America will have just a massive demographic shift. Within 50 years, it will no longer be an Anglo-American nation, obviously, as it probably already isn't as we speak. But it's going to get progressively. The demographics are. It's going downhill.
All right. Well, SJWS, Social Justice Warriors. What's the last word?
Social Justice Warriors, yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Should have been an apostrophe there. Yeah, what are you making of this? It's I was just reading this thing. Where is this? Teaching assistant. Yeah. Oh, here you go. Teaching assistant. This is from gatestone.eu. Teaching assistant. Yes, I harass women, but don't go near my sisters. We ask about a new law suggested by Dutch MP Ahmed Karkouch, Labour Party, that would make intimidating people on the streets punishable, more specifically focusing on the aggressive catcalling of women. The 18-year-old teaching assistant, Yosef Karmoehi, expresses a curious double standard. Indeed, an attitude one could be considered to be the source of the need for such a law in the first place. Here's his quote: I admit I do it myself. I talk to women on the street that I don't know, follow them around, hoping to get their attention. At least, if she scores above an 8 out of 10, she has to be pretty and have good teeth. But that in itself does not bode well for the kind of things this teaching assistant instills in his pupils. But the hypocrisy is yet to come. Here's another quote. But let me be honest. I don't want to notice men doing it to my sisters who are 20 and 23 years old. If I see it, I'll go after them immediately. So it's all right with me, should it be made punishable, because it's not what I want to see happening to my sisters or cousins. And if a copper catches me doing it, I run away. I'm a fast runner. The moral lesson of the day, do unto others as you don't want your sisters to be done by. It's fine as long as you don't get caught. And presumably if you do get caught, it's because police officers are racist. The Dutch youth is in good hands. So what about that?
Well, it's quite interesting. There was this women's march in the United States. Obviously, there were hundreds of thousands of women that marched, and in the UK there were tens of thousands, I would say. And yet not a single woman marched in Rotherham, where 1,500 white English girls were raped by Muslim predators, where several hundred Sikh and Hindu girls were also raped by Muslim predators. Not a single liberal marched. Yet they marched against Donald Trump for some crass language. So these social justice warriors, the double standard is that they don't really care about women. They only care about women when it serves their purpose. So it's not actual compassion, it's use. And unfortunately, this is the nature of today's protester, is that they protest against things that they hate and not against things that are wrong. So obviously the Rotherham rapes were wrong and no one protested. Donald Trump, they hate, so they'll protest against him.
Let me ask you this.
And that's just the nature of the social justice warrior. They've been indoctrinated from cradle till university, and they'll be indoctrinated till grave.
Jack, how did this is it just are people just acting like a bunch of parrots, just repeating what they hear? Because it seems like whenever these things all burst into existence in various parts of the world, all at once, there's organization behind that. That's not some sort of an organic occurrence. That's not a naturally occurring reaction. Who do you reckon it is ginned up all the anti-Trump attitude in the UK?
Well, I think it was just the same sort of people that have done it in the U.S. organically, the leftist talking heads in the news and on the streets. I don't think we've actually had any organizations other than perhaps Hope Not Hate, who are funded by the Labour Party and by the government, who do so via their website. And, of course, some of the newspapers, the tabloids like the Daily Mirror. But generally speaking, it's just an organic hatred that comes from just this obsession with leftist ideology. That's just, Trump is seen as a white, heterosexual alpha male. What could be worse in the eyes of the left?
Right. How's Theresa May doing? Are we liking her as PM?
I'm going to reserve judgment. I'm not a huge fan, but if she does the right thing, then I'll be happy, obviously. So.
And the right thing is to go ahead and push this Brexit thing through.
Precisely.
They're going to do everything they can to overturn the will of the people, of course.
Of course they will. Yeah.
Is it just a coin toss as to whether or not they'll be successful in keeping the UK in the European Union?
I think we will leave the European Union, but I think it's going to be watered down. I don't think it's going to be what we were promised and what we voted for. So I think we'll still have free movement of labor and people, which kind of defeats the purpose of leaving the European Union. So,
all right. What's next on ResistanceRadio.tv? Are we up and running yet?
Yeah, we are. We're taking subscribers and we're moving forward. Nick has recorded about 10 segments from on the road in Europe, in Brussels, in Germany, in Poland, in Belgrade, and he and I have done 4 or 5 broadcasts that were called Resistance Reports, and where we discuss topics from Trump's inauguration to the first 60 days in office for Donald Trump, the abuse he's been subjected to in the American media and as well as the British media, special relationship between the United States and the United Kingdom, Islamification of Europe, talking about all the topics that are to nationalists in the UK, Europe, and the United States.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Any other bright spots on the scope?
No, just I look forward to coming on and discussing more topics with you. It's one of the highlights of my week. So thanks for that. I appreciate that.
Ours too, Jack. And listen, if any of your friends or correspondents around Western Europe or Eastern Europe or inside Russia, any of those people want to come on the program, if they have something to that they want to bring to the party, by all means, extend our invitation to them to come on for a few minutes, however long it takes to let us know what's really going on, because we're sure not getting it from the usual channels over here. It's just like a shouting party on Fox News, and the rest of them, it's like, why even bother? CNN, let me up. ABC, NBC, CBS. I mean, why even bother? It's a waste of time.
Fake news, yeah.
You get more news out of the cartoons. All right.
But I can definitely do that. I can get Nick to come on and speak with you, and I'll arrange that in the next couple of weeks.
All right. Swell. All right. Well, good luck out there. God bless, and we'll talk next week. 9. Until leaving Solomon Smith Barney, he was an award-winning oil field service equity analyst in 2005 and 2002. He shifted all his investments to precious metals. By the time he left Solomon, he had become a gold and silver expert. And I definitely want to ask him about that, because now we're hearing it all over again. But and you probably know what I'm talking about. Andy does for sure. He's fired up. He's pretty ready to go. Anyway, he joined Miles Franklin as media director in October 2011, and for a decade he was a U.S.-based buy-side, sell-side analyst, most notably as an institutional investor ranked oil service analyst at Solomon Smith Barney. So, in other words, the long and the short of it is, and you're going, yeah? It's like he knows what he's talking about, and we like talking to him. So here he is. Andy, what's going on?
Yeah, I've had three career lifetimes. The first was in New York, where I'm born and bred, where I worked on Wall Street, as you said, for 16 years. I worked at Cantor Fitzgerald and the World Trade Center. I was a trader, an analyst. I lived in New Orleans. I covered the oil industry for a decade, worked at Solomon. Left that business 12 years ago. Had a second business working in the mining industry for 5 years, which was, let's just say, not rewarding. And then finally moved to my final career here at Miles Franklin. I've been here for more than 5 years, talking about precious metals and the economy.
Yeah, and you publish on the Miles Franklin blog. There's an archive of your articles on there. Every day for free, and all these podcasts, everything is free. Yeah, well, that's pretty cool. You're one of the few, I'll tell you that. Now, what should we worry about now? Now, all of a sudden, we're seeing all of these ads on people's websites. I don't care which website you go to. They're becoming so annoying. It's just like everything that the kids do. It's like, let's do ads. And by the time it's all over with, they become so ridiculously frustrating that you just go, you know what, I'm going to bail on your whole website. Okay, if all you can do is throw up ads that keep getting in the way and you're showing movies and people are talking and everything else, I don't want any of this. But the ones that you can actually click on something because there's nothing in the way, a lot of it is this thing about going to digital currency and the dollar going away, and don't keep cash and don't withdraw cash and get into precious metals. So, I mean, what's the latest? Might as well start it off the way we always do. What's the latest grief, Andy?
Right. Well, I mean, the bigger picture than just what the governments are saying now is there's a change in the world. I mean, people are realizing that things that used to be mainstream are no longer, starting with the news itself. And when it comes to money, I think we're, 10, 20 years from now, what we have today will be gone. I think a lot of the currencies will be gone. The dollar certainly won't be what it used to be. We'll probably have cryptocurrencies eventually ruling the world because no one will ever trust governments again. And then, sitting there as they always have for 5,000 years will be gold and silver storing value for people as they always have and really have done without peer. But as for what the pressing issues of the day are, it's so multifold, as I put it. There's all these precious metal bearish, everything else bullish, or bullish and everything else bearish headlines every day. There's too many things to go after. You could talk about the what's going on in China, where their historic bubble is bursting at a time where they're about to undergo a leadership change. So who knows what draconian things they'll do, and the yuan is on the verge of a major devaluation. I said that it would a year and a half ago. It's already been devalued 15%, but the real big devaluation is to come, and that's going to be pretty much cataclysmic. And now that Trump is kind of challenging them with all these trade wars, I think something's going to give there. Then you have the European Union, which I don't believe will be recognizable a year from now, because 2016 was the year of awakening, where you had the votes. Well, first you had the Catalonian secession vote in late 2015, or even you can go back to the Greek Oxy vote in the middle of 2015. But last year, between the Brexit, the Italian referendum, and of course following up with the Trump vote, it was a year of awakening. But I think 2017 is going to be the year of action, because not only is the Brexit going to actually happen, as opposed to just happen on paper, but you're going to see Marine Le Pen. I would put 90% odds. The world says 30, I say 90, that she's going to win and start the Frexit process. I believe, well, I don't even need to believe, Geert Wilders will win in the Netherlands next month. The odds on him are like 95%.
Yep. And
he wants out of the Euroland as well. Then you're going to have those snap votes at some point during this year, probably this summer in Italy, and most likely the Five-Star Movement, which wants out, is going to, if not win, they're going to take a dominant position. And then everyone keeps forgetting about this little thing, the Catalonian secession. Everyone forgets that Catalonia seceding from Spain would be the equivalent of California plus several states leaving the United States. And Catalonia is the wealthiest, biggest tax-producing province of Spain. And that is very possible to happen before the end of this year. And then you have the German elections in September, where Angela Merkel's going to lose, and the guy who is running against him, Scholz, has been called publicly the Donald Trump of Germany. So I think that's a big issue. Of course, the Grexit, they owe 86 billion euros by July. I don't think they're going to get a bailout this time, so that's on the table. You have India, where the nation has been torn apart, and I think that's going to have dramatic ramifications. And then everything that's going on in this country related to the fraudulent Trumpflation meme and the brick walls he's going to run into a reality in the coming weeks and months.
Now, this is about Andy Hoffman. It's not about it's not about Anthony B. Kim, but he wrote an article on Daily Signal talking about how economic freedom has hit an historic low. And then you look at some of the headlines on the wires, I still like to call them, and you got George Soros is sucking up to Goldman Sachs. Aetna, the Aetna insurance CEO, used the term death spiral. You got the IRS saying that, look, if you don't fill out the part that says that talks about health insurance, we won't reject your return, as they did before. If you didn't answer the health care, the Obamacare questions, then they just send it back and go, you got to answer these questions. Now they're not doing that. Let's see, there's another article out there about monopolies are worse than we thought. It looks like, I just get the sense that the big dogs are circling the wagons in anticipation of what, I wonder?
Well, yes. I mean, a combination of fascism and socialism, and in some places communism, not yet here. But in some places you're going to see it soon. It's all kind of merges into one because we have too many people, too few jobs, and there's going to be a lot fewer jobs as technology takes a lot of them. I mean, millions of them in the coming years. No savings, historic debt, and of course these fiat currencies, which are on their last legs with the final currency war in full swing. The trade wars will join it soon. So the powers that be, the 1% or the 0.1% are getting more powerful because right now they're in control. They have the keys to the car and they are milking it for all it's worth. So, yes, I mean, we'd have a lot less economic freedom if Hillary Clinton were in office. I'll give Trump that. But the fact is, from a wealth disparity standpoint, nothing is changing. And it's only going to get worse in the coming years because there's such a high concentration of wealth at the top, and there's really no means of the bottom 99% getting it back.
Inevitably, I have to ask you, and Andy, listen, you take us anywhere that you want to go, whatever the hot buttons that you want to talk about. I mean, you know this, but I'm just stating it for the record. You just take us right there. But I'm curious about this immigration blowback. All this stuff, and that idiot Jorge, it's my words, not yours, Jorge Ramos, the obnoxious, boorish, won't shut the bleep up guy that goes on and starts talking with Sean Hannity on Fox. Of course, I can barely stand Fox anymore because it's just a big screaming match, It's like going to a girls' night out party after they've had 3 or 4 wines, and they're all talking at the same time. It's like, wow, I think I'll go to the garage and look at the motorcycles, and get out of here before they turn their attention on me and beat me up or something. It's just it's ridiculous. Immigration, we keep hearing the same thing about, well, they're doing jobs Americans won't do. And then out of the other side of the mouth of the media, it's that all of these people are locked out of the labor market. So I guess my question, just a couple of guys talking here, is what jobs are they talking about? I mean, things must be, and you got to feel for it. If you have any kind of a heart for people at all, you got to feel for people who are suffering in a country that is not exactly financially booming except for the few. So it's like all these people are coming here. Mexico's saying, hey, listen, we're not ready to take all these people back. Well, yeah, we've got 25% of your population here, so you better get ready because they're headed your way. So what jobs are there for these people that they come here to do? It seems, I mean, Dallas and a couple other towns are booming construction-wise, but I mean, you got to have some massive construction initiatives going on to support the number of people coming here for work. So if Mr. Trump's immigration plan, they decide, you know what, this is too much trouble. We don't want to run the risk of ICE showing up at any moment. We're just going to go ahead and self-deport. We're leaving. Is this going to help things or hurt things? Because I repeat, on the one hand, there are no jobs. Trump's trying to bring back jobs, but immigrants are coming into the country to get the jobs that Americans won't do. I'm a little confused here.
Right. Again, a lot of this stuff is all, old thinking from generations past. The world has changed. In fact, from what I've read, there's a net outflow of Mexicans from America these days. And you're right. I mean, what jobs are they so excited to get? I mean, it's not like they're leaving Syria where they're worried about getting killed. I mean, the freedom of living in Mexico is no different than it is here, and there's certainly no great jobs here, let alone with inflation absolutely exploding. And now there won't even be Obamacare theoretically, so there's less chance that they're going to get some benefits by being here. So the whole immigration thing, I think, is more rhetoric than anything. In fact, I think it's really just channeling. I think Trump is really just channeling what's going on in Europe, where the demographics are so much worse than even here. Because I mean, I don't mean Muslims, Arabs are taking over because it's so bad that it's Muslims and Arabs. It's just that they're coming there because that's where they're geographically located. I mean, if you're fleeing Syria or Iran because of war, or you're fleeing Saudi Arabia or Iraq because the oil price is down and it's becoming a much more difficult place to live, you go to Europe because it's nearby. And so they are being overrun demographically. And I've said for some time, the biggest problems the world has are, overpopulation, demographics that are only making it worse in the fact that the traditional civilizations are being overrun by new cultures that are unwanted. And, of course, the fiat money printing, which has caused overcapacity in so much industry that there's just not going to be jobs around. The oil industry is a perfect example. They created too much capacity because there was too much money printing and too much financing of oil companies that should never have been financed, to the point where it's crashed the oil price. And now you have all these immigrants from Arab nations that are taking over European nations. That's why they had the Brexit, and that's why they're going to have the Frexit, all these things. And then you throw in the technology we're talking about that's taking away millions of jobs on top of that. And, you've got some pretty big socialist and political problems. And that's where we stand right now in the United States and in Europe.
We got a Russian ship parked off the East Coast. A little saber rattling going on there. So let's take a wild turn to the left, meaning the evil side of things. Is war good for anybody's? I mean, other than the countless lives that are lost and so forth, over the last century, the quick fix to the economic problems of this country and that was to get a nice war started. We've had this ongoing thing for, 14 years next month in the Middle East. And I'm just wondering, is it ultimately going to be a war that straightens out the world economy? I mean, is war the tool that is used to sort of shake out the non-hackers and restructure things and take control so that they can restructure things? Does it look like, what are your sources telling you about the chances of something like that happening? I don't mean like the nuclear exchange. That's not going to work.
I don't have any sources, John. I mean, historically, wars occur during times of economic chaos.
Yeah.
Which is where we are now. I would argue that certainly in our lifetimes there is more economic chaos than ever. And now we have the political chaos on top of it. Basically, people responding to the economic chaos. So, will there be actual wars? I don't know. History says so. I don't say so. It certainly could. We're definitely going to see currency and trade wars. We're already seeing them en masse, and they're only going to get worse. And usually when we say, well, war has been the fix, well, it's really, a lot of these wars start accidentally. I guess some of them may be pre-planned, but when they are pre-planned, it's more because the people in power want to maintain power, as opposed to anything else. I don't think that they care about anything else other than, their own hide and fortune and glory have caused more death than anything throughout history. So I would hope not, but I'm more concerned financially, and I do know that the currency wars must inevitably go on until all currencies are destroyed. And the trade wars are going to be part and parcel of that, whether it's border adjustment taxes or tariffs, or anything that Trump is talking about, most of which is more populism than realism, because you're not going to get those jobs back. First of all, most of those jobs aren't even jobs anymore. They're robotic jobs. And we are so uncompetitive, it wouldn't matter if you brought the jobs back, because you'd have to subsidize the companies with taxpayer money for them to be profitable. And then, of course, the companies the countries you're competing with, well, they'll just fight back. They'll institute their own tariffs, and they will devalue their currencies further. And all this tough talk has made the dollar go up, which makes us even more uncompetitive. So again, look, I don't know what the end game will be as far as the actual terms and whether war or not war is part of it. But I do know that the contention around the world politically and economically and socially is going to rise. And there's the one thing I am sure about is that purchasing power of of all fiat currencies is going to be a lot lower next year and a lot lower the next year after that.
We've covered this ground before, but maybe we should cover it again. All of these, the fiat currency, the inevitable doom of the fiat currency and all that. Fiat currency is just representative of something that the nation that's issuing the currency has to offer, right? So
that's by the full faith and whatever it is.
Full faith and credit of the U.S. government.
Yes, full faith and credibility, right.
Yeah. So I'm just wondering, do you think a move to digital currency is inevitable?
Yes.
Do you?
Probably, certainly as much or more than anyone in my field. And, in the monetary space, anyone who's not thinking about this is crazy. And, the thing I've said all along, look, I've worked for a precious metal bullion dealer now for 5 years. I've been massively invested in physical precious metals for 15 years now. Actually, next May will be 15 years. And no one believes in the value of gold and silver more than me, especially now that they've been suppressed at a time which has created an historic supply-demand tightness. But as money, as actual currency, as opposed to a store of value. Fiat currencies all fail. We know that. I mean, there's been 1,000 of them throughout history. Every single one has failed. And gold standards are great in concept, but they fail too, but for different reasons. And the main reason being that the governments that administer them renege on them. Starting, from clipped coins back in Roman times, all the way to the Bretton Woods Agreement and Nixon cutting off the gold standard and all the encumbrance and sale of the gold that governments claim they have. They don't work either. And certainly now, because no one will ever trust a government again after what's happened this time around. So the problem is that there's been nothing to replace it. So that's why I've said for some time, I don't believe there's really a practical gold standard that could ever happen. But what else is there? Because there'll never be a fiat standard again after all this debacle until Bitcoin came around. And I've become a major advocate because I believe that decentralization out of the hands of the governments is going to be not just the way of politics, but the way of money. And I think as I learn more about it, that it's going to be harder and harder to stop this trend once it gets started. It's no different to me. To me, the two greatest inventions of our lifetime are the internet itself and Bitcoin. And again, I'm not telling people to speculate in Bitcoin. That's your choice. I mean, I do, but that's your choice. I'm talking about the concept of decentralized cryptocurrencies is going to sweep over the planet in the coming decade like nothing we've seen since the internet.
Wow.
And governments will fight them to the death, just like they're fighting gold and silver to death. And they're going to lose both battles in gold and silver's case because they're going to run out of gold and silver to hold the price down with, and demand will get too high. And in Bitcoin's case, simply because it's decentralized. There's really no attack vector, as they say, because, you can say we're banning it and stuff like that, but this all goes on the internet. And as long as there's an internet, there's going to be cryptocurrency.
This I'm still trying to wrap my head around the whole blockchain thing. I've not been able to determine if am I boring you? I am.
No, I've been up. I sleep 5 hours a day, John.
Do you really?
Last night was a 4 3/4. I counted.
Oh, dude, that's not good for you,
But I get a lot done.
Okay. Well, all right. There it is.
But there's generally a 3 on the clock when I wake up, as there was today. And I wrote an article, did a podcast, did a lot of stuff around the house. So just a little tired. That's all.
I got you. Well, look, so this Bitcoin thing.
Yes.
Now, on the one hand, I hear, well, it enables you to have transactions anonymously. Okay? And that's one of the reasons we don't want cash around, because we don't want people to be able to conduct transactions anonymously. Then the next thing I hear is that, no, when you use any kind of cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, I think there's a couple of other ones that are kind of trying to be Bitcoin, but Bitcoin's the one for now. No, it leaves a trail. Everything you do, it leaves a trail. So which is it? Is it the same as dealing with cash, and you can actually conduct transactions anonymously, or not? Right.
Well, the thing with cash is governments want to ban it because they want to be able to control the current system. And if you ban cash and therefore you control the digits, you can bail in, you can do negative interest rates, you can do all kinds of horrible things. You can force people to spend money by making interest rates more negative, as opposed to now if people have store cash and you can't. So that's really just a control mechanism. The thing with cryptocurrency, though, is no, it's not fully anonymous. I mean, it's pretty darn anonymous because I don't think the government yet has the technology to uncover every transaction, figure out where it came from. But yes, they could if they wanted to. It would take an awful lot of effort and time and money to do that. And as you said, there are other cryptocurrencies out there which actually are, have a platform of being fully anonymous. And by the way, at some point, Bitcoin could easily layer those technologies on top of theirs. So it is possible that one day Bitcoin or whatever other current cryptocurrencies are the leading ones, and I think Bitcoin will be the one, will be fully anonymous. And that's why governments fear them so much. The problem is that it's such an untraditional means that they don't really know how to fight it yet. And that's why I believe that once the price gets high enough, and I have a feeling it's not going to be too far off, when the attention of the investment community gets on it, it's going to scare the hell out of them. because they're going to realize that we better figure this out and soon, because they're going to take market share in a big way. And so I think that's going to take a lot of the heat off of gold and silver, which they're already on the verge of losing that battle because they have no more gold and silver. So I think, I call them the twin destroyers of the fiat regime, because I think there's just a movement underway to take them down by natural market forces. And Bitcoin is, to me, the most disruptive monetary force in history.
I kind of like the sound of that,
Yeah, it should be a name of an article. But I do mean it. I mean, I'm not kidding. The internet and Bitcoin are the two biggest things of our lifetimes. And I think our kids will not be using dollars, certainly not dollars anything like we have today 20 years from now. And there's a lot of changes in the world that governments are going to have trouble stopping. And eventually, it's those 5 stages. There's the denial, and then you fight it, and then you join it, and and you eventually lose, or whatever that is. And that's what's going to happen, because people, there's just, there's 7+ billion of those people versus a handful of these people. And ultimately the will of the people, which is showing up in these votes left and right, is starting to overwhelm the will of the 0.1%.
Sometimes I think we truly are living in a democracy, because I think we've got way more morons than geniuses out there, and I think the morons are running things. I mean, Nancy Pelosi still thinks George Bush is in the Oval Office, and Maxine Waters is worried about Putin invading Korea. So, and I'm just thinking to myself, okay, is this the same caliber of mentality? If this is what we have in government, and certainly not everybody is like that, but enough of them to slow things down. I mean, Andy, people out here in regular land who are not specialists, they're doing their jobs, whatever it is, it's just something that, they provide goods or services, one or the other, and even if the service is intellectual, it's not some physical thing like fixing your air conditioner. That's what they do. We provide goods and services, or goods or services to each other. But this feels like Monday, week before last. But the thing is what kind of mentality, just philosophically speaking, don't we have the best and brightest minds looking at the stability of world finance since all the rage in the early 2000s was, multinationals, oh boy, once you've gotten yourself into a nice position there at a multinational, you're set for life. You can just rake in all of this dough. But there's nothing but complaint among the so-called people about how these multinationals and these huge corporations that wield all this financial power, how they actually yank these various countries in the world around and foment this discord and that. So ultimately, my question is, what is the mentality of the people who are actually in control of the financial system? Are they the best and brightest, or are they just as stupid as some of these politicians are? Or is the answer really obvious?
Oh, the answer is obvious, and I can put it in 2 words: Keystone Cops.
Oh no!
Yes, and look, the way that I look at it. These are people, and yes, I mean, you have to have something going for you to get yourself to a position of power. But aside from that, the actual knowledge of how things work and how to, quote, make things better, I don't see anything in the world's powers that be that show me that they know any more than the average person. They just, have the ability to get themselves in a position of power. I've talked about the central planning Keystone Cops, particularly the central banks, who are theoretically the smartest bankers in the world, and time after time, I mean, they have an unblemished track record of failure, and it's all in the name of just gathering as much personal wealth as they can, wealth and power. It's the same. That's why fiat currency systems always come around, because it gives enormous power to the people who are in charge of the keys. To the printing press, and those who lobby the keys with the printing press and own the owners of the keys of the printing press. It's just that simple. So, that's why anytime you get these demagogues in and people attribute this spirituality, this divinity to them, I just laugh. I mean, Donald Trump is just immortal. I'm just picking him as one guy, and he's done just as he hasn't proven to me any godlike skills, and he's the smartest of the bunch. If you look at the bankers, they're mostly academians. If you look at the people on Wall Street, they're mostly sociopaths. And the few times they do invent something creative, like a credit default swap, they destroy the world with it. So no, anyone who thinks that these people know any more than you do and that they know what's right for us and they know how to fix things, trust me, it's the opposite. The people who would do the right thing would never get to positions of power like that because they are not sociopaths. It's like, look, everything they do is like the movie Fargo. It's that simple. If you want to just, any given day you read the news about what politicians and bankers and oligarchs and corporate CEOs are doing, just think of the movie Fargo. The guy had a little problem and he thought he had a simple solution to it. He needed a little money, so he arranged a little kidnapping of his wife. And the next thing you know, everyone's dead or in jail. That's what happens. They're trying to they're compounding their failures with more failures, trying to find a quick fix Band-Aid to get them through the next day. And, so I think that every day these guys wake up on the defensive, simply trying to get through the day and making things worse.
Let me ask you something. Here's one out of left field. I didn't know this, but John Nash?
The movie, The Beautiful Minds.
Yeah. I didn't know he was killed in 2015 in a car crash. He and his wife were lost in that thing. But, and I just want to ask you this, I've come unstuck in my attempts to determine what it was that he did in regard to finance and money. Do you know?
It was game theory, right?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, well, I wish I knew what he did, but I think there's a bit of the Machiavelli in there too, and him. But it's more human nature than anything. The people who are in charge of the governments and the banks, they're just playing to human frailty and the human, this is how people act, especially when they're in positions of power. And then when you give them flawed tools like fiat currency systems, they wreak havoc. And I'm sure there is some game theory to explain why that occurs.
It's so funny. What a character Nash was. He wanted to renounce his American citizenship and everything else. I guess the whole apparatus scared him. Okay, well, now you have been focusing lately on. Everybody thinks that if the American economic system gets into serious trouble, it'll take the world down with them.
Which it will. Right.
But it looks like Europe is closer to a collapse than the United States is. If the UK leaves the European Union, and then if France leaves, 2 out of 3 Germans want Merkel gone. I got a feeling they'd sort of like to get out of the EU also. I suspect that'll be the next set of headlines that we hear in about the next, I would say in about 3 months. That's what we're going to be hearing is Germany wants out of the EU. If the EU collapses, just look into your crystal ball and tell me. The EU collapses on Tuesday. What does Wednesday look like in the United States?
Right. Well, the EU will collapse. And it's not just going to be France. It's going to be Holland and Italy and countless others that will follow because it's a broken system in every way. And the impact, well, for one, you're going to see countries go back to their own currencies, which will be inflationary and will involve debt defaults, major debt defaults. In the case of Greece, it may be outright debt default, just saying we're not paying anymore. And in some cases, it's going to be due to inflation. That's guaranteed. So you're going to see a massive rush of Europeans trying to get their hands on anything that could preserve their purchasing power. That's number one. Number two, you're going to see a plunge in global trade. And given that we're, in my view, pretty much at the lows of global trade of generations, certainly in the post-financial crisis era of 2008, this is as bad as it has been. So it will get a lot worse. And you're going to see also, what's going to be the reaction in the currency markets. If the dollar explodes higher and makes us the most uncompetitive nation on the planet and takes up the pegged Chinese yuan with it, then you're going to see more devaluation. So I think I think the end of the European Union would be the catalyst that finally breaks the whole fiat regime, because the currency wars will go nuclear, and there'll be a lot of political chaos, and financial markets, there'll be a lot of losses in real terms. Nominal terms, it's questionable, because there could be some major inflation of the nominal prices, but in real terms, I mean, we're talking about right now as we speak the highest ever valuations of stocks, bonds, even real estate, if you could believe that, in places like the United States. So I think it will be a very scary event. It will not be able to be glossed over by market manipulation and money printing. If France is going, it's not like the Brexit, because France is in the euro. The UK is not. If France goes, there's no more euro. And then you're going to see a mad scramble for people to protect themselves. And protectionism will be that the protectionism we're seeing now will only get that much more virulent.
All right. Now, I want some double secret information here, and that is this. Should such a collapse happen, which carpetbaggers will profit from this discord, this collapse? Somebody makes money in every crisis. If suddenly the Eurozone really does collapse, and it's like we're going back to our own currencies, and that's it. Euro's over with. We're done with it. Who will make money? Who will profit from this?
Well, certainly anyone who owns precious metals will profit, because the gold cartel will be overrun. They won't be able to hold the price down when there's that many people trying to buy it, particularly now that production has peaked for both metals. But who will profit? Look, I mean, there's always someone out there, but it's not going to be pre-planned profits. I mean, I'm sure there'll be, I'd say, bankers, but a lot of bankers are going to go under too, particularly the European bankers. So I really can't think of it in terms of who will profit. It's really, as they say, whoever loses the least wins. And I think precious metals will certainly be one of the few winners, but most of the quote winners are going to be those that don't lose everything. And a lot of Europeans are going to lose everything. And a lot of people around the world are leveraged to the fate of Europe.
I got one last question for you. I hear these commercials. This little guy comes on and he starts talking about your credit card debt. And most credit card companies won't tell you that you can legally screw them out of the money that you owe, the money that you spent, that you're unable to pay back now by going through their debt relief program. Okay, fine. Now, what would the effect be if people decided, look, we've got too much debt. The debt is killing us. We just keep rolling over the debt. What would happen if the debt just got written off? They just went, you know what? We're going to pull the cord on this train. This is stupid. We're not going to roll over the debt and make it bigger every time we roll it over, every 30 days or whatever the cycle is. We have more debt now because there's interest on the debt. What would be the effect if a consortium of countries just got together and said, you know what? We're writing it all off. The debt does not, we're just going to take the hit and that's it. What would happen?
What would happen is no one would ever want to own the currencies again. They'd crash because, they're writing off debt. People borrowed in those currencies with the assumption that they'd get paid back, let alone if it was borrowing from the government, which is supposedly the best imaginable credit because they can print as much money as they want to pay it back. So it would cause an instantaneous global currency crash. You say, will there be war? Well, I'm pretty sure you'd have actual wars if that happened, but they won't do that. What they'll do is try to inflate it away. Well, one, they'll try to buy time by doing what they do now. They rig markets, they rig economic data, they throw out continual propaganda about everything is great. But then people start to not listen. And, they obviously are not listening about how things are great because that's why they're voting everybody out right now. And eventually they're going to take further actions. Like if they don't trust that the governments, if they think the governments are going to renege on their debts, then they're going to crash the currencies and try to seek safe haven elsewhere. So there's no way of winning, kind of like the Obama administration threw out a trial balloon of $1 trillion platinum coin to pay off the debt. I mean, if you try that, that's the end of the dollar. So good luck to you.
Wow. So basically what started off as something pretty simple has now turned into a game of spinning plates, and they're really, really expensive plates. And
yeah, well, look, when they got off the gold standard in 1971, no one had any debt. So you had it, the way I put it is like getting a credit card with nothing charged up on it. I mean, you can just charge the heck out of it. So it makes Ronald Reagan look like a hero. I mean, Ronald Reagan was the biggest deficit spender in the history of America, and somehow he's considered a conservative. And I mean, my God, the guy's an actor. He's not even like has any economic background. They're like, oh, he's this great conservative economist. But the point is, once the credit card is charged up, every incremental dollar that you try to add to that debt literally makes things worse. It has a negative impact, and that negative impact is not just seen in the economy; it's seen in the social standing of the people, the political unrest that results, and of course the purchasing power of the currency that it's issued in.
Now, this program is not intended to provide financial advice to anyone. You could lose everything. You could be destitute. But if we were giving financial advice on something, you're thinking, get some gold or silver and do it now because things are going to get stupid. What's the timeline? What is Mr. Hoffman's timeline for stupidity to occur in the financial markets?
Well, that's endless. But as far as precious metals go, around the world, you know, everyone focuses here on the United States. They're just so secular. They realize Americans, especially probably, you know, majority of listeners are Americans, and they think, well, the price of gold is down 35% from its highs here. I mean, it's horrible. But they don't realize that gold is priced in 180 currencies, and the average currency, gold, is probably on average about at its all-time high right now. And that includes some very, very nearby nations, you know, like Mexico and Canada and Australia, where it's either at or near those all-time highs. So in a lot of countries, there's already, you know, very, very tight markets, and many you couldn't get gold if you tried. Here, you still can because this is the center of the manipulation, and you can get it at historically suppressed prices. But as we found out, particularly in 2008, but later on in 2011 and 13 and 15, those shortages crop up very, very quickly, particularly in silver when people get nervous. And I expect that this time around, when we have the next inevitable shortage, it's going to be one that's not reversible.
Well, now is this emergency audio blog? The end game has commenced. Protect yourself and do it now. Is this a recent audio blog?
No, it's. I've used that term, protect yourself and do it now, many times.
Oh, gotcha.
But look, there's been many, many events in recent weeks and months that would make one extremely worried and to the point where they should be protecting themselves. And if you live again in a lot of these 180 countries, you've already passed that point. It's already too late because things are spiraling out of control. But thus far, the powers that be have managed, with our superior technology, to rig markets long enough to have people still believe that there's still some hope over here. And as a result, they've been able to maintain the suppression of gold and silver and the elevation of these ridiculously valued stock and bond markets. But, you know, how much longer can they do it here? I don't know. I mean, but again, you just look around the world and you see how many places where it's failed, and you realize that inevitably the cancer will spread to the top of the totem pole.
Do you put out a newsletter, Andy, or is everything to be read located on the Miles Franklin site?
Well, we actually have a daily email newsletter. Again, it's free. It features myself and whatever our CEO and co-founder David Sheckman writes, as well as some other key articles and things to read. But everything I write or tape is up on the milesfranklin.com blog in real time.
All right, and the audio blog every day?
Yeah, the audio blog is part of my offering. I typically do that once a week. That's also
once a week.
All right. Yeah.
All right, swell. Well, listen, thanks for the time. I mean, same as it ever was. It's not getting better out there. So, but you're convinced that if you want to back something up, if you want to back up your finances, precious metals is the way to go. Real estate, no.
Well, real estate is a very illiquid asset, and there's no guarantee that it will do anything. I mean, gold has thousands of years of history of protecting yourselves against the very ills that we're suffering now. And so I have no worries. Again, Miles Franklin, we've been around for 28 years now selling precious metals, and we have not a single registered complaint. So just look, email me at ahoffman@milesfranklin.com. We could talk about all these issues just like we do, and you could decide for yourself if you want to protect yourself this way or in any other way.
All right. Well, as they say on Wall Street, the trend is your friend, right?
Yeah, I guess it's not. So the trends aren't really friendly right now, but as long as you follow them, you should be okay.
Exactly. Thanks for the time, Andy. Thanks.
Very welcome.
Take care. All right. Andy Hoffman, everybody. All right. Wow. Wouldn't it be great? I'd like to have a freight car full of gold bullion, but where would I put it? Uncle Joe's storage lockers, $50 a month. Store your gold in there. You know, I wonder. A lot of people dream of having lots and lots of cash. It's like, well, forget about that. That's fiat currency. I want lots and lots of gold. Yeah, if you think the cash was was difficult to carry around, try carrying around, I don't know, $100,000 worth of gold. Well, that might not be too bad. You could probably carry it in a backpack. Oh, well. The times, they are changing. The times, they are interesting. One thing's for sure. You know, people absolutely... You know, the only thing that is constant is change. Yeah. People don't like it, though. But the changes, they are coming, and the changes, they are happening, whether we like them or not. So that's why we talk to people like Andy, so we can kind of get an idea of what maybe we can do, make things a little bit easier when the tough days come. And they always do. And he's on the same page with so many of the people that we talk about. Virtually nobody has said that acquiring some precious metal, everybody seems to agree that the silver has the best upside, meaning that it's the lowest investment for, you know, the highest increase in value. So if you can do it, even if it's just a few coins. I think silver is somewhere around $18 now. It was 16 forever, it seemed like, but it's going up, and that's a trend, and that trend could be your friend. Stand by to midnight. And for me to meet personally, I look forward to that day in the not-too-distant future. That will happen. That's Pastor James David Manning, chief pastor at the Atla World Missionary Church on 123rd Street in New York City. He grew up in Red Springs, North Carolina, has been at Atla since 1981. Atla, A-T-L-A-H, stands for All the Land Anointed Holy, which is God's name for Harlem. He graduated from the College of New Rochelle with a Bachelor of Arts degree and continued on to Union Theological Seminary in the city of New York, where he was awarded a Master of Divinity. He also holds a Doctor of Philosophy degree from the Atla Theological Seminary, an unaccredited educational institution. And he is the husband of the wonderful Elizabeth Sarah Manning, as well as a father and grandfather, author of 70 Letters to Atla, published by Wellstar Publishing in 92, The Oblation Hour, published by Publish America LLP in 06. Newest ministries, the Temple Hour of Prayer, 29 May 2008, and the Manning Report, 25 August 2008. Also, the Atla Men's Business Association, Vibrant Men's Group, established in 03. And it goes on and on for pages and pages. He is engaged, and his life's work is serving the Lord and helping people overcome those things that try to just overwhelm them and drive them into a position that they seemingly cannot get out of. But he is an inspiration to literally thousands of people, and it's a delight to have him back on the program. Pastor Manning, how are you, sir?
I'm just fine, John. This is a real honor to be back on your broadcast again. It truly is. Thank you for having me today.
Well, thank you so much for saying that. It's I just think what you're doing up there is amazing. You must feel every once in a while like the kid with his finger in the dike. The finger's holding, but the dike's collapsing all around. Or are you seeing a shift in people's attitudes? Do you find that? Are we still sliding down the hill, or have we got a foothold here, and things are starting to stabilize a little bit?
And to answer that question, it takes a little bit of time to try to explain. Most people that walk by our church, we have from 70 to 140,000 people pass by our church every day. And we have a little courtyard out there, and sometimes in summertime I'll sit out and I converse with people passing by. And a large number of the people tell me they agree with what I say. They just are looking for some other answer. I'm not sure exactly how crazy that is. And then there are a segment of people who still are vehemently and viciously and angrily opposed to me and what I do. But I think that they know that I'm right. I live in Harlem. I've lived here for 35 years. That within itself is hard for people to negate. We feed hundreds of children every morning from all over New York City. You can come and get a breakfast before going to some other schools that they go to. And not that feeding people is the best way to do in a welfare state mindset. We're not running a food stamp organization. But I think that when people see all the school children pouring out our churches, pouring out our building when school is over with, and they see the consistent work that I do for 35 years living in the community, it's hard for them to disagree with me. I mean, if Obama had my pedigree, I think he'd be the world's greatest president. That's what I think, and I think people agree. So it's kind of like that, John.
Well, he's gone now. We got the new one in, Mr. Trump. What do you think about this fellow?
Well, I think that we have made America has made a serious error in judgment. And I'm concerned about Russia. I am concerned about our present state of being with respect to where this nation is going politically. I'm extremely concerned about the biblical prophecies of the world turning upside down and what is referred to in the biblical sense of a tribulation where you've got wars and rumors of wars, nations against nations, and I don't see our nation getting better. I am extremely alarmed, if you will, about presently where we stand.
What's the brightest blip on your scope? What's the biggest problem? I'm seeing just ridiculous escalation in what appears to be racial division. I do not know what's causing this, but it seems like somebody just flipped a switch.
Yeah, you're right. That is a major issue, the racial division, and it very well could stem from the fact that a lot of Hamite people, if you will, formerly known as black people, put their hopes in a failure, one of the biggest failures in modern history, in Barack Hussein, the long-legged Mac Daddy Obama. And he left them high and dry, John. I mean, he did nothing for them. He made Wall Street. He created over 400, if I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong on this number, new billionaires around the world in Wall Street, but did nothing for the people. So I think that what we are looking at is a sense of anger in people that is creating a racial problem. And moreover, when you look across the tracks, there's not been a lot done for the people left in West Virginia. I had a friend of mine for many years who lost his broadcast. He was from West Virginia, and he didn't support Tribulation Trump. I've referred to him as that. And, the people stopped supporting him. And for a year, he wouldn't bend and wouldn't bow. So I think we need someone who can bring about racial harmony. And right now, the only person who can do that is Jesus. But even the churches aren't paying attention to him. We have a problem in America, a serious one.
Yeah, I'll tell you, and you see this like these people out there. It seems to me that if the media and the money people would stay out of it, at least things might calm down a little bit. You get all these protesters. I mean, they don't even know what they're protesting about because half of them are paid. They're complaining about the president, and half of them didn't vote. I just really don't know where we're headed here, at least for the time being. The Black Lives Matter seems to have calmed down a little bit. I guess Soros has directed his money somewhere else, but now the whole thing is about immigration. What do you think about this? Personally, to me, Mexican's a nationality. It's not a race. They can call their outfit La Raza if they want to, but again, I say being Mexican, that's a nationality. So,
I've long since, I guess a number of people have thought I should fear for my life for the positions I'm taking against Islam. I have not considered it a valid religion. It's antithetical to God's principles, I believe. And I have long since been concerned that Obama was a Muslim and that he exalted Islam. I mean, yeah, we did have 9/11 and Al-Qaeda became a household word. But you remember when Obama became president, John, the first thing he did was his first phone call, I think whether it was to Turkey, was to an Islamic nation, and he traveled to Egypt and spoke at the Great Hall there in Egypt and then flew across Jerusalem over to Turkey and spoke there in Istanbul. And so I don't have a lot of love for Islam. Mexicans, on the other hand, in terms of the border situation, while I don't agree with Tribulation Trump and I don't support him, as you know, once I did support him, but when I discovered that he went against the very basic teachings of the Word of God by supporting sodomy and then validating Obama, there is no way I could stand in the pulpit where I preside over little girls and women and children and men as well and validate a man whose his personal behavior is as confessed as vulgar as his. But on the other hand, because there's no way I can say that's Christ, and I could tell little girls 12 years old, if you get grabbed by the coochie, it's all right, and that our president does it. I can't do that, and I can't say that the man with man getting married is okay. I can't do that. But I do think that in terms of Mexico and the immigrants and the problems in our nation is something that needs to be looked at. I'm not sure that Trump's going to be able to build a wall, and looks like the courts have stopped his travel ban, if you will, on bringing Muslims in. My problem is with that as a man of God, I'd have to throw away the Bible to support Tribulation Trump.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I was reading a thing yesterday. Out of the 500 million conservative Muslims, 50 million of them are okay with violent jihad against non-believers. That's quite a gang. 50 million, and that's just an estimate.
But you know, at one point, at least the people who keep numbers on this kind of a thing say that the world is inhabited by 1.7 billion Muslims. You know, I've said, and a lot of people have chided me or accused me of being wrong on this issue. You know, I don't believe there's such a thing as a peaceful Muslim. Now, listen, I understand that the Muslims can act in peaceful ways. I understand that Muslims can act in altruistic ways. I understand that Muslims can act in peaceful ways. I know that. But I think at the heart of the identity of Islam does not lend itself. If you are Muslim, then you're not peaceful. I mean, listen, Jesus said this, John. Jesus said that we as Christians are going to all the earth and make disciples of all nations, teaching them the things that Jesus taught and baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Ghost, that we are to leave nobody unproselytized by Christianity, and that Christianity ought to have a mandate and a brand. Well, the same thing with 1.7 billion Muslims is that they ought to kill the infidel, or either you convert and become a Muslim. And you can say the 50,000 number that you just gave is a horrific number. If you got that many in ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Hezbollah, then we got a major global problem. But I think all 1.7 billion are dangerous and treacherous. And that's just my point of view.
Yeah, we talked to an imam the other week, and this is a guy that wound up doing, I think, 5 years and 4 months because he was trying to get, this is a Libyan guy, Imam Khalid Tantouche. He was the man that supposedly, he said this. I mean, I only have his word for it, but it sounded like he was on the level. He prepared Gaddafi's body and his son's body as well for burial. And he was saying, these people, this is not Islam at all. He goes, Islam is not a violent religion. It's like, Okay, I mean, I listened to this, and the man seems sincere at all, but I've read some of the Quran. It seems like it doesn't seem like it's all that nonviolent to me. It really doesn't. So,
And I say amen to that. I remember the first time I read the Quran, and going through its various surahs. It is a very violent. Listen, John, I got to tell you, have you read the Old Testament? It's a very violent book.
yeah, it is.
Forget about the Quran. I mean, David slew 40,000 Philistines in one day.
Yeah.
Moses drowned Pharaoh's army in the Red Sea, killed the firstborn. I mean, they went on a marauding killing spree with Joshua cutting through the land of Israel. I don't see Christianity being all that peaceful. I mean, you know what I mean.
No, absolutely, I do. Absolutely, I do. But but that's when they were under the law, and I understand we're not under the law now with the advent of Jesus. So I don't know. I got some catch up to do in my theological studies. Because
well, I think that in terms of whether Christianity is as violent as the Old Testament, you have to remember, and of course maybe you will not, that the fight for the heart and soul of Jerusalem, before it became mainly Jewish as it is now, is that Richard the Lion-Hearted says he was led by God. And going back further than that, Constantine, who changed the worship day for Christians in 320, whatever it was, AD, changed Christianity from worshiping on Saturday to Sunday because he was in battle and he was a leader of Rome, and he said he saw a sign from God that God would give him the battle if he would make Christianity a Roman religion, and he did, and it gave great influence on spreading Christianity across the Middle East and across Europe and the Greek land spaces. So Christianity has been violent. It's just that there have not been books written that are collectively about, like the Old Testament. I mean, if you look at Richard the Lion-Hearted and the crusades he had into Jerusalem, fighting with the Muslims and fighting with Saladin, and the years of battle that they fought and the blood that was lost by the Crusaders and by the Muslims in the name of Christ, all the various battles that were fought. So Christianity is as violent, if you're going to call it that. I'm not sure that's the best way to characterize it, but there have been no less deaths in Christianity than there have in the Old Testament. It's just that the Old Testament is now compiled reading, and the only way you're going to get this information about Christianity, Richard the Lion-Hearted, Constantine, and the Visigoths, and all the other great battles that were fought, you have to get them from a large segment of reading that's not as compiled as the Old Testament.
I'm just wondering, this is a heck of a question to ask anybody, and certainly it's a heck of a question to ask you, but do we think that some sort of like massive conflict between the races is inevitable here? Or do we think that things will just kind of settle down and we'll have little spikes here and there, but there won't be any big deal? The races turning on each other. I can't figure out which is going to trigger it more. This social justice thing, or whether it's going to be money driven and nothing but, and they'll use whatever label they want to get this done in furtherance of some greater agenda, probably removing more freedoms from people, or if it's going to be driven by religion. I just wonder where we're headed here. I keep looking into the crystal ball and it doesn't work. It just I can't figure it out. Usually I can predict what's likely to happen, and many times it does happen. But I'm unstuck on this one.
It's an excellent. It's a great question, and you should never fear to ask it. I think the problem is that it's not being asked with the kind of clarity in the right places where it should be asked. I think people are dancing around the issue. They're not even asking the question. They're throwing out what they believe would be their university-learned social engineering answers to the problem, and that they have all failed. You might have noted, if we're talking the racial problems here in America, that we had fewer racial problems during the period referred to as Jim Crow. That is before civil rights. That is before the marching of Dr. King. Like it or not, what people are going to have to do is recognize that we had a better society, we had a better America, and we had a better, if you will, black people, who I refer to as Hamite people, before the civil rights movement. Now, I know Jim Crow was bad. I know the Reconstruction period was bad. I know slavery was bad. I'm not ignorant. I'm not obfuscating that. I'm just simply saying that the civil rights have brought about a time over the last 70 years in America of racial division that was greater than it was during Jim Crow or during the Reconstruction. And while slavery had its own problems, to be sure, that was an understood way of life. It was wrong. It was brutal. But I think that what we have, what was birthed in the civil rights movement, and until people are willing to say that. Now, of course, there's going to have to be ways in which we look at what I refer to as Japheth, the son of Japheth, the white people, and their contributions to what has happened over the last 70 years. But we had a better America, John, 70 years ago than we do today, racially.
Somebody said something recently that was pretty interesting. And I pondered this because everybody wants freedom. They say they want freedom, but it's like, well, but wait a minute. What is the actual definition of freedom? Is it not being restricted by government? I mean, let's look at children there on the schoolyard. It's like, no, Johnny. It's always Johnny. I don't know why, but it is. Don't do that. You can't do that. Don't pull Sally's hair. Don't do this. Don't do that. Well, I want the freedom to pull Sally's hair if I want to because actually I like her. You must control your primitive instincts, okay? Don't pull her hair anymore. In other words, you have to restrict the freedom of even the children on the playground. And sometimes I think that not everybody can handle general freedom. In other words, I'm going to put this as a question rather than make a statement because I'm not sure if it's right or not.
I've already read your mind. I know where you're going, and you're absolutely right. And let me try to respond to it this way. You know, I have one of my problems here in Harlem. While people they respect me as a leader and a man of God, I've said things, John, that continue to resonate to the day, and they'll resonate throughout all of eternity. I said that when black people, I refer to them as Hamite people, were in Africa, they never built a seaworthy vessel. Now, if you look at Africa from Morocco to Egypt to South Africa, there's 25,000 miles of seacoast from top to bottom. And for those nations of Africans before the beginning of the slave trade, they never built a seaworthy vessel. The Vikings in Norway and Sweden, and at one time Iceland, sailed to America long before Christopher Columbus did, and I have archaeological support to that historically. But for them to not build a seaworthy vessel, I say they've never built a comb, an automobile, lived in grass huts, never built anything above 2 stories for centuries in Africa. And until they were introduced to the Japheth Society, they made no major world contribution. Now, a lot of people get angry with me about that, but I try to make it plain that this was God's. This was the hand of God. The most contributions made by Hamite people have been here in America with the assistance of Japheth people, making it possible through their universities or through their education system or through their infrastructure of government. But a lot of people will not forgive me because they think I'm condemning or that I'm saying that Hamite people do not have the ability to handle freedom. They can't handle the truth. That's not what I mean. What I do want to say is that the truth is what it is historically. Now, let's see, how can we call upon God? Because he's the only mediator. He's the only one that can change these circumstances. He's the Great Society by Lyndon Johnson, or the election of a black president, or alleged black president, and Barack Hussein Obama. God is saying to us, it ain't going to happen politically for black or white folk. It's got to happen with God. It was God that put Hamite people in Africa. It was God that gave them their abilities to do or to not to do. And he is the one that we're going to have to turn to. As long as we expect the government or some other institution socially to do it, we're going to find ourselves in a deeper hatred towards one another and no coming together. So,
yeah, you know where I was headed with this was actually, and you took the thoughts right out of my brain. It just seems like not everybody needs to be granted this whole set of rights, because if you restrict these rights, then they are protected from each other. I mean, look at this bunch over in Chicago. Now, I know Chicago's not your turf. Your turf is Harlem, New York City. But, you know, every time we see crime statistics, it's all these, it's absolutely off the chart. It's unbelievable how many people get shot every weekend out there. Doesn't make any difference. Men, women, kids, dogs, cats, everything. And I'm just wondering, what's the deal? I mean, New York City is a much denser population, but you don't have this kind of killing going on up there, do you?
No, absolutely not. And again, one of the reasons why I'm still working on trying to deal with the people is because I have stated that what we see happening in Chicago is the judgment of God. In other words, God's anger with Chicago for producing Farrakhan, Obama, Jesse Jackson, Oprah Winfrey, and Jeremiah Wright, to name a few, and not exposing these people. I mean, it's like the hubbub of the evil Hamite leadership coming out of Chicago. And it is the judgment. God is allowing this to happen in Chicago, and only God can solve that as an issue. And I've preached that, you know, until the people in Chicago began to speak the truth about their leadership. See, John, you know, when you have a warped sense of your identity, then you have no constraints about killing your brother next door. Listen, these people in Chicago on the south side are not going over the Michigan Avenue and the Michigan Loop and killing people there. They're killing people right next door. It's because of their warped sense of leadership and understanding. And God has removed the ability for them to disseminate the truth and a sense of peace and love. God has taken that away. Not man, not Rahm Emanuel, not the government, not Lyndon Johnson, not John Kennedy, not George Bush, not Ronald Reagan. He didn't take that away from him. God has taken it away from him. And until we begin to recognize that, the killings are going to continue. Now, could it happen in New York? Of course it could. But we don't have the same kind of a hotbed of the absence of God. But I have to tell you this, John, as well, that there are a number of people that are viewing Tribulation Trump as their leader the way people view Louis Farrakhan. You know, 1.5 million men went down to Washington listening to Farrakhan, who is a Muslim, and they say they were Christians. And the same way that they advocated the power of God and turning to Farrakhan or Jesse Jackson, or voting for a person like Barack Hussein Obama, who we know is a Muslim and a sodomite, I can tell you the same kind of judgment is coming upon the people across the track for supporting Tribulation Trump, because it's the exact same identity. It is the exact same thing. You know, when Judah was taken captive by Nebuchadnezzar in the Bible, the northern kingdom of Israel had been taken by the Syrians, and God sent the prophet Jeremiah to tell him, don't you see what happened to your sister in the north? And y'all are doing the same thing, and the same destruction is coming your way. And so I'm saying to people all over America, Trump supporters, don't you see what's happening to black people for voting for Obama? Don't you see how they were skewered? How this killing in Chicago, how they have nothing? Haven't y'all learned anything? Because the same thing is going to happen to y'all for voting for Tribulation Trump.
I got to ask you, what you mentioned the Russians, but other than that, Pastor, what's your main complaint with Trump?
Well, the fact that has supported sodomy as a lifestyle that is okay with him, but fast on the heels of that. John, I gave 8 years of my life facing down angry mobs in Harlem because I spoke the truth that Obama was ineligible, that he was born in Kenya, he was a fraud and a liar from way back when. And people threaten our church. We have little girls and babies and old women and men coming to our church. They threatened to burn down our church, to kill our members because I wouldn't support Obama. I steadfastly said that he was wholly and completely ineligible to serve as U.S. president. When Trump came along and said that Obama is legit, he's constitutionally legit, he effectively said that I put the children and the women's lives of this church at risk for nothing. He said effectively that I and other so-called birthers were fools for pursuing this for as many years as we did. And so there ain't no way I can come to peace with a man who said that I put the lives of these little children at risk over nothing. And he's just going to change all of that, and I'm supposed to agree with that. Ain't going to happen that way.
Yeah, you're not supposed to speak your mind. That could rock the boat a little bit. I mean, if that's your story and you're sticking to it, then you get threatened to have your church burned down. Well, that's the whole thing. I'm dealing with a bunch of idiots right now that because I do not want to subscribe to their non-scientific, totally absurd premise, now that justifies, oh, it's a good thing I don't live close to you. You're not my neighbor. I could come over and break your legs. It's like, oh, you better watch your back. You can't believe it. I mean, if it were something like supporting Donald Trump, that'd be one thing. But when you're talking about the earth being flat, and I say, no, I'm not interested in talking about that at all. I think it's stupid. It's like, oh, boy, here they come. All profanity-laced messages, all kinds of threats and stuff like that. But, of course, they're cowards and idiots, and they won't do anything. Most of them are probably mentally ill. But that's a story for another time. It's amazing. It's gotten to the point now where if you don't agree with someone, if you don't support what they support, then, and no matter what you do, they'll find a way to make it fit their delusional framework. They feel then justified in attacking you with threats of violence and every kind of obscene sentence that their 60 IQ can put together. So, I totally get it. And, that birth certificate thing where Obama's concerned, Sheriff Joe Arpaio and the fellow works with him, I can't remember his name right
Mike
this moment.
Zulu.
Yeah, that's Mike Zulu. They've proven that birth certificate is completely fabricated. And then Hugo Fugan came on this program, and we talked with him for 7 hours, made it into a two-parter, and he proved, certainly to my satisfaction, I hope to the satisfaction of the audience, and anybody else that becomes an audience member, that whole plane crash that supposedly killed the Hawaiian health director, Loretta Fuddy,
right,
total setup.
Right.
Total military operation.
Absolutely. No, it was. I agree.
Restricted airspace between 24,000 and 27,000 feet, swimmer delivery vehicles in the area, all of this stuff. I mean, I just wonder, it just begs the question, Pastor, where are we going and what are we doing in this handbasket? You know what I mean?
Yeah. You're absolutely right, and your guest was right about Loretta Fuddy, about Sheriff Joe Arpaio. Listen, John, here, when you've got the so-called president of the United States presenting a forged document that can be demonstrated on his face that it is forged, and he is the president leader of America, the greatest nation ever, and he can get away with that. There's something wrong. When we got, listen, his grandmother, Madeline Dunham, was alleged to have been in the hospital with a hip injury. She fell, broke her hip.
Yeah, Stanley Ann.
Yeah. No, that's his mother, but his mother.
Oh, the mother. I'm sorry, I missed it. Sorry about that. Yeah, go ahead.
A month later, she dies from cancer. She was released from the hospital, and all the reports was that she had a broken hip and she was going to be okay. Her husband, they were Methodists, was buried in a church graveyard out in Honolulu with a tombstone. Obama went to Honolulu, had her cremated, and had her ashes thrown over Honolulu Bay and not buried beside her husband. And nobody asked any questions. Nobody said, why is he doing that? I mean, the kind of, and this is the person that not just Hamite people, black people, but a ton of white people, Japheth people, praised this man as well and would not let you ask any questions about him, whether he's authentic or not. Now, John, here's it, and you understand that. This is a travesty beyond travesty. But here's what I want you to think about prayer about. You don't have to respond to this, but think about this. It is hard to get grapes growing on a fig tree. It's hard. If a tree is destined to bring, if it's a grapevine, it's going to bring forth grapes. It ain't going to bring forth figs. What everybody need to do, including people challenging you, is that they need to step back and look. If America has produced Obama as the president, as illegal, the fraud, the murderer that he is, the person that succeeded him cannot be better. And the reason why Trump validated, the reason why Trump said that this man was authentic is because he is succeeding in the evil that Obama produced. You're not going to get a sweet America and a great America, a unified America, until we clear up who Obama was. And anybody that precedes him is going to be worse. Now, that's hard for a lot of people to swallow. But agriculturally, agrarian-wise, and just plain simple truth. If you had Obama and nobody did anything about it, the next person comes and sits down on the throne, it's going to be worse than Obama. And that's just how that is. And that's what we're looking at right now. And that's why race relations are as they are, and our world is in the calamity that it's in right now. Not easy to digest, but that's what's happening. And John, I got to go in about 2-3 minutes.
Okay. All right. I get you. Look, the other thing that bugs me, I just want to get your comment on this. We got safe spaces, snowflakes. We got people wearing badges that remind them of their white privilege. We got, I see this country following exactly the same pattern that South Africa followed when, now look who they got for a President, Zuma, who's so afraid of being assassinated. He's got to have like a battalion-sized security detail around him all the time, and he can't trust any of them either. And what I'm getting at is they want to rewrite science. They've declared that tornadoes are racist because only black people are getting killed by them. They're declaring that the white engineers are racist because they built the reservoirs too big because they don't fill up fast enough. If they'd built them smaller, they would have filled up faster. And you got... And they have decided that science, as we know it today, is racist, and all contemporary science needs to be erased, and we need to start over because it's racist. Now, they don't explain exactly how it is that it's racist, but it is racist. And I see the same thing happening over here. As a matter of fact, I see this frenzy over the flat Earth thing to be exactly parallel to deciding that all contemporary science is nonsense, satellites don't exist, sunrise and sunset are an illusion, it's just the distortion line. They seem to think that if you build a highway that's, 1,000 miles long, let's say, and it's perfectly flat, well, we know the surface of the Earth is not perfectly flat. So they're talking about, well, at 100 miles, there'd be a 7,000-foot drop or some nonsense like this, because they think that because the world is round, you build a road and it's like a diving board hanging off the top of the world. You know, the road just goes straight and hangs out over there. This is exactly, I see this as drawing enough people into this ridiculous premise that you actually have some people that are so convinced that they have been lied to about everything that if you tell them no, they respond to you with violence. And I'm leading up to this question. If the truth about Barack Obama were ever really exposed, do we think that truth, if it was confirmed, this is the truth, undeniable, do we think that would be appreciated in a positive or a negative way? I'm thinking that it would make so many people so angry to find out that all these things about him being an illegitimate president, if it was ever shown to them that this was absolutely true, I think it would make them madder than they were when he was just accused of being illegitimate.
There are a couple of things. One is the people, the flat earth idiots. I don't know if I want to waste my time with them, but I will say this, that we have a problem that only God can solve. And let me try to flesh this out, then I got to go.
Okay. I
was in South Africa several years ago, more than a couple of decades now. Nelson Mandela was still on Robben Island when I was there. The 5 pillars of apartheid were still in the government style, and you needed a pass to travel from one place to the other. But as a student, we had pretty much the run of the country, and I went to Pretoria, which is the capital, Cape Town, and Johannesburg. I think we might have gone to Durham as well. I'm not sure, but in Pretoria, they've got this museum. It's kind of like the Washington Monument, except you could walk inside. And according to the historians there in South Africa, the Afrikanos first came down the Transvaal from North South Africa, and tried to settle in South Africa, and the Zulus beat them back. There was war, and they just kept coming And there were several wars over several hundred years. The Zulus kept winning the wars, but the Afrikaners and others just kept coming down the Transvaal into Pretoria and ultimately into Johannesburg and then finally down as far as Cape Town. And ultimately, the Afrikaners were able to beat the Zulus fair and square. I mean, it was like what America did when she came here. She may have had a couple of scrimmages with the Native Americans, we refer to as Indians, but ultimately America prevailed and beat the Indians and have built this great nation, America. I mean, you can, and these were arguments were raised back in the 70s and 80s. My argument is this. I mean, you can talk about the South Africans of Norton and Zuma and others. The truth of the matter is they lost the battle. Now, you know, if you lose the battle, you lost the battle. When Joshua walked into Jericho, they lost the battle, and the Jews took the land. When America walked into the Puritans, the Pilgrims, the English settlers walked into America, they won the battle, they took the land. What are we going to do? Reverse it now? Go back and give it back to the Native Americans?
Right.
Who very well may not be able to run it the way it's being run now. We have to seek the mind of God. I think what I'm trying to say is that we don't have enough of that kind of justice spoken. You know, people say, was I in support of the Afrikaners and against the Zulus, the native or the indigenous people? They lost the battle. Now, as far as Obama is concerned, he was supposed to win the battle that had already been fought and won. And that mindset has led both white and black America to try to rewrite history by having a black president and rewarding black and rewriting the whole idea of the slave trade coming from Africa, the whole idea of slavery, to rewrite that. It ain't going to happen. I think South Africa was a mistake in terms of its present government. I think the nation has gone to hell in a handbasket. Do I think brutality was how Afrikaners and Zulus should have gotten along? No, absolutely not. But I think that it was a mistake in trying to make South Africa's black president a reverser of history. The same thing in trying to make Obama a revisionist of history in America. It was wrong. It failed.
Yeah.
And it continues to fail.
So in the end, there ain't no going back.
No, and there isn't. We got to go forward. But we got to go forward with the truth. And John, I got to go. I have an appointment downtown with City Hall. Some people down there don't like me. In the New York City government, they don't like me. So they want me to come down there and talk to them. So I don't want to be late for my appointment.
Well, go down there and give them a good talking to, and God bless you, sir. And I look forward to shaking you by the hand in person in the not-too-distant future, all right?
All right, John. Take care. I'll be looking forward to seeing you as well. Take care of yourself.
All right,
good
now.
being on your broadcast today.
Bye-bye. Wow, is he a ball of fire or what? But he's right. You know, what do we take from that whole conversation? There's no going back. There's no going back. You can't retard the advancements, and you can't advance the retarded. And by the way, going to that flat earth thing, I'm just going to say this and no more. I never said I was going to debate these people. I'm not going to debate them. There's nothing to debate. But it is amazing. You cannot imagine how these people behave. And as far as I'm concerned, if your only response to somebody saying, I don't agree with your theory, in fact, I'll go as far as to say it's absurd, and no rational thinking person, no experienced person, nobody who's ever gotten out and seen anything of the world, nobody who has not seen. Some constellations are visible in the night sky in the southern hemisphere at certain times of the years and a certain time of the year, and they're not visible. They're visible in summer. They're not visible in winter. Okay, and then the very proponents that claim there's an ice wall all the way around the disk. I mean, I wouldn't even mention this except for the fact that the volume of hate mail that comes in because these people are absolutely convinced that they're right. Satellites don't exist. Sunrise and sunset's an illusion. It is unbelievable that in 2017 anybody would actually embrace this. You got one expert on there saying that, oh, Antarctica, it's no-go, nothing goes on there, nothing can go on there, and then the next thing out of his mouth is that several countries have research facilities there. I really don't know what has generated this insanity, but I suspect it's the same thing as what's happening in South Africa, where they want to, no, contemporary science has absolutely got to go. It's all been a lie. And neurotic people think that they're being controlled by other people. Profoundly neurotic people even think that satellites, which don't exist, are following them around. These people gather together, they bind to each other, and they support each other. And they attack people like me who oppose the absurd. Well, I've got some news for you. You say, I better watch my back. You better watch your front. But more than that, you need to get yourself some help. Because if the only way that you can advance your argument is through threats of violence, that tells me that you are one thing and one thing only. And I believe that this is true. I believe they are the worst of the liberal progressives. They're the ones who want to retard science, scientific advancement. Oh, that doesn't exist. We want to go back to a 4th century belief. Well, if you think you're going to change my mind through threats of violence or profanity-laced messages or blowing up the Facebook page or anything else, all you're doing is making yourselves look like exactly what you are: violent, misguided, retarded people. Do yourself a favor. Get out of Grandma's basement, go out into the world, and see some of this stuff yourself. As far as your so-called observational proofs are concerned, what does that even mean? That's right in there with social justice. Or a cult, maybe. Doesn't exist. It's a myth. All right? So that's it. And if this sets off another, it's unbelievable. You should sit in this chair. However, all of that said, I like it. As I like to say, anytime I can tweak up a liberal, a progressive, a communist, or a weenie, that makes me happy. So until we meet again, exercise caution in your daily affairs. I do. Eyes up always. Sharpen your critical thinking skills. If you don't have any critical thinking skills, get some. May be important to you later. Make ready for what's to come. I love you, people. Be seeing you.